Hey everybody, how you doing today? It's the Canadian Commie here. Today I am here with a fellow Marxist, Joel Bergman. Joel Bergman is the editor of Fightback magazine. His website works at Marxist.ca. How you doing today, Joel?
I'm doing very good. Thank you, John, for having me on here.
Oh, fantastic. Joel, what is Fightback magazine? What is Marxist.ca?
To correct something you said a little bit, it's not just my website. We're a revolutionary organization in Canada, and we have branches all over the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast, Montreal, Toronto, all over Ontario, Alberta. So basically, what we're a revolutionary organization of hundreds of revolutionary Marxists, and we are trying to put forward a revolutionary socialist alternative to the crisis of capitalism, which has ultimately manifested itself in so many different ways. You can even see it with the COVID-19 pandemic and the inability of the governments around the world to really combat this, mostly due I would argue, the capitalist system, or the climate crisis, which I believe is caused by capitalism, or the massive growth of inequality and whatnot. So yeah, we put forward a revolutionary socialist alternative to the problems facing humanity today. That's a sort of basic summary of that. And we publish our analysis of Canadian politics and some international stuff on our website, Marxist.ca.
So what would you say are the primary activities of your magazine or of your organization?
Well, yeah, we publish the magazine and the website. The magazine we actually have one in French, La Riposte Socialiste, and one in English, Fight Back, that are come out once a month. And we have a growing subscriber base of, I don't even know how many now, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of subscribers, which has been wonderful. Many people want to read a Marxist analysis. So that's one way that we get our ideas out there. But we're also more than simply a magazine. Like, we're a members driven organization in the sense that our active members they're active week in, week out in the running of the organization. So that means, that means many things, but we believe that the movement has been thrown back in many ways. Most people don't even know what Marxism is. So we're doing a lot of work in education. So a lot of young people are getting really interested in socialist politics and Marxist theory, and we do a lot of reading groups. We have booklets, we have educational booklets, books, and anyone who wants to learn, we're there to help people learn. So we're that. We run reading groups. We have events as well. Mostly it's been on Zoom, obviously, because of the COVID thing lately, but we do when it was normal times, we're doing events all over the country in person on could be anything, on what is a revolution, on what is Marxism, what is capitalism, the socialist solution to the climate crisis, for example, on just pretty standard basic things that a lot of people don't know that much about, honestly, and they want to learn. I joke that socialism or Marxism is really the only expanding market these days. There's a big market for these ideas. And I think that a lot of the left has kind of gone away from your traditional Marxist ideas right at the moment when they're needed. So we're trying to bring that back into the movement, because we honestly believe that that's what the movement needs to win. I think we've seen it in the labor movement in particular, that the labor leadership has moved so far away from any semblance of class struggle or socialism or anything, that you have the damn president of this Canadian Labor Congress basically embracing the Liberal Party and getting rewarded as being a senator, being fully embraced into the ruling class. So we believe that we need to start from the ground up, educating people on the basic ideas, and go back to those ABCs and fight for, I believe, like a socialist alternative. Like, we don't believe that there will be any solution under capitalism. I know that might sound, Bill, basic to you, but that's our general message for people out there. That's really, it's pretty basic what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, well, but when you go through a major societal collapse, and this is what I say on my channel all the time, we are going through a capitalist collapse. We're regressing back into feudalism, if we have not already done that. And when you find yourself in that position, you go back to the basics. You figure out how to stand on your own feet. You figure out how to crawl before you walk, this sort of stuff. And so we need to be doing exactly as you say, Joel, the basics. So let's talk about the current political situation, because this, I think, is really important.
Sure.
Federally speaking, what would you say? You are not satisfied with how the Liberals have been operating the country?
Oh, not at all. Well, basically what, obviously I'm not a fan of the Conservative Party.
Yes, of course.
In any way, the capitalist class in Canada basically has two fists, and it hits you with the right one, the Conservative Party, and that's the more naked one. But then when you get upset at that fist, they put in the other one, which maybe is a bit more sneaky, but they still hit you nonetheless. And sometimes they hit you even harder. But I think the Trudeau Liberals are probably the best example of this. It's the Obama type politics. It's the smooth talking. I mean, they use a lot of identity politics. Like you see this with the Indigenous Governor General. It's a joke, to be honest. It's no wonder why they're doing that at this time. They're trying to use it to have a sense of stability, and even this whole talk, I find even the talk about reconciliation, it's basically the regime trying to reconcile itself with Indigenous peoples, which I don't think is possible. It's a capitalist state, and you have these two parties that have traded power back and forth for the history of the country, and working class people have suffered. Racialized folks have suffered. Indigenous people have suffered probably more than anybody else, obviously. And we basically think that the solution is to, we don't put faith in the Liberal Party. I know there's some people on the left that kind of have a bit of faith in Justin Trudeau. I even see it today a little bit. We're saying that's not the solution. That's not the solution at all. We need class independence. Working class people need their own organizations separate from those of the bourgeoisie, even the so-called progressive type that talk a good game, but end up screwing you anyway. So that's really kind of a long and short of like the very basics of politics in Canada for us, is that we're revolutionary socialists. We believe working class people need class independence against the capitalists, regardless of what party it is, really.
And then, so what would your analysis of the NDP be within this conversation?
Well, the NDP was formed in the early 60s by a merger of the CCF, that was like Tommy Douglas's small prairie socialist group, and that had been in government in Saskatchewan, and the CLC, that was sort of the main representation of organized labor. So I'd say it was a progressive formation because it was bringing the working class into politics. And I honestly believe that's the reason why we have some things, because it's we don't have it in America, for example. They never had a labor party like the NDP. And it scared the ruling class. And I even think the liberals moved left because they don't want to give up the territory to the NDP. So they do, there is some things, but it's because they're threatened. It's because they're threatened, right? Now, the NDP obviously has moved rightwards. I don't believe in moving to the center. They've moved rightwards towards accepting capitalism, and they largely have accepted capitalism. In the 60s, they called themselves socialists. I don't believe they've used that word officially in a long time. And you've seen this, they've never had power federally, but they've moved, but they've taken power many times provincially. And you see this now in British Columbia. We saw it with Rachel Notley in Alberta. They accept the logic of the capitalist system, and so they end up betraying everything that they stand for and what people vote for. So I would say the NDP is, it still has connection to the movement, to the labor movement, but the leadership, I think under Jagmeet Singh, there's not that much difference between Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau, to be honest. Politically, it doesn't seem to be that much different. And I think that's why Justin Trudeau is still relatively high in the polls. It's not because people are happy. They just don't see a good alternative. Yeah, I would say the NDP is not, I wouldn't say the NDP is a capitalist party. I know that some people say that. I'd say the leadership accepts capitalism, but the base and the tradition of the party is sort of more socialist and connected to the trade unions and the social movement. Now, obviously, the party's drifted so far right that it's become sometimes a bit of a joke. I mean, even the NDP were the ones arguing for corporate bailouts last year during the middle of the pandemic. When, as socialists, we say expropriations, you know. The capitalists, in order to save lives, we should be nationalizing things. We should be expropriating, not bailing out capitalists. I think that shows the bankruptcy when you accept the capitalist system. You have to accept things like this, which I don't know if, I think some people were maybe a bit surprised to see the Labour Party, the so-called Labour Party, accepting or even proposing handing large sacks of cash over to private enterprises. It's quite incredible.
What you're talking about with the shifting of the NDP to the right, I feel like that shift has happened across the political spectrum, right? Like that the Conservatives are not a right-wing party. They are a fascist party at this point, and that the Liberals are the right-wing party now. And so the NDP are now the Liberals. This is why I call Jagmeet Singh an orange liberal, because everything he's saying sounds to me like a response, like how liberals would respond to this crisis. They would look for incremental reform. They would look for Keynesian economics, right? They would look for a way to maintain the power of capital while attempting to ameliorate the anxiety of the populace. Like that's what liberals do, right? Like that socialists would do as you suggest. They would nationalize and expropriate and get rid of these capitalists. Like why are we even dealing with them? So so Joel, what do you think? Do you think that electoral politics is the solution to this crisis? Do you think that we can, as a nation and as a people, resolve this crisis electorally?
Short answer, no. Long answer,
no.
I am a Marxist. I am not an anarchist. So I don't say that there is no place for parliamentary politics as a Marxist or a revolutionary. I mean, you can read a lot of Lenin on this and some of the greats. They were not dogmatic with regards to these questions. They said you can use the elections as a pulpit to get the word out there, right? And use it to expose the capitalist state. So I would say that, yeah, I'm not. I mean, that's a long story short. I mean, I'm not. I don't say don't vote, because I find that the people that say don't vote basically mean vote liberal. It ends up meaning vote liberal. The generally speaking, if you don't have a replacement, if there isn't a credible replacement for bourgeois democracy, which is what we have, it's a bourgeois democratic system, then you don't boycott as a Marxist. So I would say, I mean, vote NDP, but what's more important as sort of the Labour Party option, but what's more important is to get involved and fight for socialist ideas. And to be honest, because a lot of the ideas defended by the NDP, I know that on the left, a lot of people can get very upset at the NDP, especially on the radical left. Oh, they're a bunch of traitors or something like that. Well, in the labor movement, those ideas are entirely common. Like the leadership of the labor movement is essentially the same as the leadership of the NDP. Like they have the same ideas, they have the same perspectives. Sometimes they're actually the same people. So if you don't know how to contend with that in a party like the NDP or in the movement in general, then you're just kind of scared of contending with the main trends, I think, in the movement. I think there's a lot of people that have illusions in bourgeois democracy and elections, that have a lot of illusions in the state or in reformism. They think, oh, just incremental reforms will slowly get there or something. And so we need to engage with these ideas and be able to convince people of a revolutionary socialist alternative to these problems. And whether or not that's through elections or not is going to depend on the context, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know if that's a satisfactory response.
Well, are there any satisfactory responses at this stage in the game? Like we are dealing with, I feel like there have been big wake-up calls for the populace that this COVID crisis itself was a gigantic wake-up call for lots and lots of Canadians because they've come to see that, oh, this is how the capitalist class is going to deal with something like climate change, that they're not going to deal with climate change in a way to ameliorate suffering in the populace. they're going to profiteer off of it and attempt to make as much money as they can and abandon as many people as they can doing it. And that's become very straightforward and obvious. And in the face of this, I've noticed that Fightback has been attempting to organize protests and things across Canada. Can you talk about some of the successes that you have seen, or some of the setbacks even that you've seen while attempting to organize this way?
Protests? We haven't had that many protests, obviously, because of COVID. So we've had limited of ourselves organizing protests. I mean, we go to protests, of course. Like we were very active in the BLM protests that blew up last year after the murder of George Floyd, and we were quite involved in some protests around like the Indigenous struggle throughout the year. Very important to be in solidarity with that. But yeah, things that we've organized ourselves, we have spearheaded along with other groups and unions a anti-capitalist May Day in Toronto over the past couple of years. It started small, it sort of ballooned up, and a lot of the main unions have got on board. I believe even the OFL have gone on board with that, which with an openly anti-capitalist May Day. I think that's a conquest for the left in Toronto. We've done something similar in Montreal with Labor Day, because there's already a kind of an active May Day. So anyway, and we succeeded in getting the main unions in Montreal at least on board with an anti-capitalist Labor Day last year, which actually was in person. We were able to do it in person and it was okay. The cases were low, everyone was masked, we were distanced and everything. But yeah, the COVID's complicated it. So we didn't do May Day. We didn't do May Day last year or this year in person, obviously, because it was really not possible. It was right in the middle of the first wave, and then this year the third wave was hitting. So yeah, we've where we're able to. I mean, we don't try to scream louder than our own voice will allow, but we have a sizable presence in Montreal, Toronto. We've been more active in trying to spearhead some things like this and work with other groups and unions to get like this. To get the movement to organize around openly anti-capitalist politics. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what you're referring to. I mean, other than that, I guess we have done a couple of small things. Like we have members of the group active in some unions. Like we helped organize Ripley's Aquarium last year. We had comrades that were heavily involved in that union drive. Things like this.
Are you at all familiar? I've been seeing a lot online recently, the October strike. And this seems to be a meme that is circulating around that I'm become very interested in, and I'm wondering if you've been noticing it yourself.
October strike, I am not.
Okay, octoberstrike.com is, I would suggest, go take a look. This seems to me to be something that is beginning to capture the imagination of the populace, I think, because there does seem to be a large segment of the populace that is literally like on board with everything that is being said, but they just are waiting for the go. Like, what's the day? Let's set a date. Let's actually do this thing. And it could very well be this October strike. So from one Marxist to another, maybe check these guys out.
Well, is it like a labor thing or something?
Honestly, I've been trying to get an interview with these guys, but I feel like they're just beginning their organization now, and so it's been quite difficult. But I'm just saying, have a look.
Okay, and I'll check it out.
So, Joel, if someone wanted to become involved in your organization, how would they go about doing so?
Well, there are many ways to do that. Like I said, we hold events. We just held one on South Africa, actually, on Saturday. We had a South African Marxist describe basically describe the revolution of the Black working class that brought down the apartheid regime, which is something that's not widely known. Yes. Anyway, so I would recommend people to start attending our events. And then if you really want to get involved, start with the reading groups, really. If you got to start with the ideas, and if you're on board with the ideas, then people can get more involved in the org. That's really the way that it goes about it. So if someone wants to get involved, we're growing quite rapidly. We've had hundreds and hundreds of people pretty much Probably a few thousand in the last year that have reached out to us that want to get involved. And so that's a massive amount of people we're a relatively small group to deal with. But we're basically trying to focus on bringing these people in, educating them on Marxist ideas, and building like solid Marxist activists that can be active in the movement. Yeah.
And so the portal for them would be Marxist.ca.
Yeah, Marxist.ca. I would encourage people to get a subscription to our paper. You can see it. I think it's at subscribe, or you can see it on the front page there. Yeah, and people read the paper, start reading articles. If people want to get involved, more the merrier, basically. We have events, we have reading groups that people can get involved in, and actually even more. I mean, we're doing activity really depending on the area of the country in the movement. I already mentioned a few things that we want more and more people to help mobilize for, really, to get the word out there.
Congratulations, by the way, on actually getting the website Marxist.ca. Good for you.
Yeah, it was a bit of a coup, I think. I was surprised nobody had it. It was when we got it back in the day.
Sort of floating out there. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, as COVID begins to lift, and as COVID begins, because as you say, that's been a complicating factor, but it seems as though we are heading towards, what with the vaccines and all of this, we are heading towards some kind of general lifting and an attempt by the capitalist class to, quote unquote, get back to normal. What actions is your organization, or what actions do you think other organizations should take in this post-COVID era in order to get the agenda of Marxism more embedded in the public social consciousness?
Yes, well, I think that what is coming is the mother of all movements. So there's going to be many opportunities for us to connect Marxist ideas with the movement. Why do I say that there's a mother of all movements coming? Well, the economics of the situation are all sorts of messed up. Last year, the economic crisis that was not caused by COVID, I wouldn't say that, but triggered by COVID. There was already massive economic problems, I believe, waiting for something to set it off. And COVID was kind of that trigger. That collapse was so massive and so disastrous for the capitalist system that capitalist states, including Canada, all over the world, completely shifted their economic policy overnight, and they all became basically Keynesianists, and they all became, free money people, just like open the floodgates, free money, and the overwhelming majority of that money is gone to prop up private businesses. Yep. Mostly large businesses through the corporate wage subsidy. That was like what I mentioned was actually an NDP idea, or the just open bailouts, basically, or some form of loans and stuff. And so that's led the government to be massively indebted. And also they've done this thing that's called quantitative easing, yep, which is basically when the federal bank prints money and then lends it to the government. So it's like the government lending printed money to itself. But economically speaking, the long and short of that is if you increase the money supply without a commensurate increase in products and commodities in the economy, you're going to create inflation, and you can already see it happening. And inflation, the rise in prices of commodities, is basically a wage cut by another name. So they're trying to get away from that, but then they're causing it in another way. So I believe that's just starting, and I think it's going to accelerate. And I don't think that they have a lot of other options. I think that the crisis going forward is not going away. I don't think there's going to be some I think even if you read like a journal like The Economist or the Financial Times, like the bourgeois economists they're not predicting an amazing rebound. Maybe we'll give a slight, I even think that that's rather optimistic. I think, I'm not saying there's necessarily immediately going to be a big crash, but the prospects aren't very good. And the question of debt is going to be absolutely central. Who pays? The government cannot simply run up they can't just go into debt endlessly. Someone's going to have to pay. And do you think it's going to be the capitalists that pay? The fat cats on Bay Street are not going to be paying for this. They're going to come to you and me, working class people. There's going to be the tax austerity cuts down the road. And there already are currently. You look at Alberta. Look at what Jason Kenney is doing He's doing flat cuts on nurses in the middle of a freaking pandemic across. This is what we can look forward to in the coming years. And I think as Marxists, we need to be prepared for that. And we need to, so I think there's many things that can be done. I think there's so many people interested in socialist politics. Like we're basically preparing for the coming movements that are going to be quite massive, and trying to build ourselves up in preparation for that. We have comrades active in the labor unions who are obviously going to argue for like a revolutionary class struggle perspective. Like you fight to win. No more class collaboration. That doesn't work. We've seen it over the past years, the sellouts, all of this. It just led to more and more job losses, more and more cuts. Like weakness invites aggression. So yeah, we are trying to build up layers of conscious Marxist activists all over the movement that will be able to connect with this growing wave of, I would say, a coming wave of mass anger even openly at the capitalist system. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I think it's it's connected with a general perspective. Like now what we're doing is we're just trying to get our message out like we would any other time, writing articles, holding events, meeting people. But I think that the big picture thing is that I believe there's basically a revolution coming at one point or another, even to sleepy old Canada that's not known for that, you know.
I'm very open on this channel about that the only real path forward for legitimate confrontation of the capitalist structure is full-scale rebellion at this stage. Like we need large groups of people to shut down the 401 highway here in Toronto. We need large groups of people shutting down the railway system, shutting down the ports. There's no more negotiating with these capitalists. Like the capitalists have shown that they're not actually interested in negotiating. That they see us as commodities to use as they see fit. And if we continue to attempt to treat this as if it's a negotiation, then we're going to negotiate ourselves right into the grave. And that's the plan, near as I can tell from these capitalists. Well, Joel, I think that this has been a really wonderful conversation. Is there anything you'd like to add before we head? Anything you'd like to pitch, or anything you'd like to kind of put a little point on?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll just end on, if you're listening to this and you're interested in getting involved, we are Fightback, La Riposte Socialiste. We're active in cities all over the country, and we're fighting for a revolutionary socialist alternative to the crisis of the capitalist system. And I encourage you to get a subscription to our paper. You can see it on our website, Marxist.ca. And there is a join us or contact us form on there. And if you fill that out, one of our activists around the country will get in touch with you and you can get involved in the group, basically.
Brilliant, Joel. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck. We're going to need it.
Thanks, John.